I'd like to welcome everyone to the community meeting for the Casa Buena. Looks like we're turning another chapter, which we respect to the Casa Buena, which started in October 2021. That's when Marin County engaged Homeward Bound as a new operator of that site. Also at that time, Marin County executed a funding agreement with Homeward Bound for renovations of the Casa Buena. And that includes overall site improvements, as well as adding kitchenettes to the room to make it truly supportive or permanent supportive housing. Renovations started in November and they're expected to be completed in the spring of 2022 or so. Before I get into the purpose of me, I just want to do some quick introductions, and I'm just going to go by first names. I'll introduce Homeward Bound on the end of this, just because we're going to segue into you guys. But we have Ashley and Lorenzo, both with the County of Marin. And I'm sorry, let me back up for a minute. We about a year and a half or so ago, when the whole project came out with the county, we started a working group, which included the county. And that time it was Catholic Charities, staff from Corte, Madera, as well as residents. That working group has met for the last, again, year and a half or so. We continue to meet. Homeward Bound, I think, joined our meetings in June or so. So the ones I'm going to introduce, these are people that have been part of this for a while now. So again, from Marin County, we have Ashley and also Lorenzo. Thanks. And then on our committee, from a resident standpoint, we have Scott and Adriana, and also Glenn. And then Leela Mongan is also a committee member or working on our working group. She's also a member of the Corte Madera Town Council. And then from staff, God, we got Pulperia people. From staff, we also have Adam and Michael Moriarty, who've helped out a lot also. Okay. And then I also have been a member since the very beginning. So just kind of segued in, purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce Homeward Bound. They are the primary provider of Marin County homelessness shelters and services for homeless families and individuals in Marin. They're going to provide us an overview of the Casa Buena program operations, and that includes what they do as far as staffing, tenant selection, they call it leasing, on-site support services, property maintenance. It's going to cover the whole gambit of what they do. And then we're also going to hear from the County of Marin as far as the construction, the schedule, what they're in the process of doing, what they have done. So those are two key pieces. We will have a Q&A at the end of this. So any questions related to anything we're talking about, please feel free to chime up in the end, if you just hold the questions to the end. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Mary Kay. She is the Executive Director of Homeward Bound. And if I have this right, Mary, you've been with Homeward Bound for more than 20 years.
That's right, Fred. Time flies.
When you're having fun.
Yes, exactly.
So
Thank you.
I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks so much, Fred. And Happy New Year, everyone. And may it be a happy and healthy New Year for everybody. We are pleased to join the Corte Madera community tonight to introduce Homeward Bound to you and to respond to questions you may have about the Casa Buena project. We're calling it Casa Buena project right now. It may be something else as we go down the road here. We who are pleased to meet with you are myself, Mary Kay Sweeney, Paul Fordham, who's Deputy Executive Director, and Colin McDonald, Director of the Housing Program and on our management team. We also have our McDevitt construction partners on this Zoom for clarifications about the buildings and the landscaping. So first, we would like to thank the members of the Corte Madera Advisory Committee and staff of the town of Corte Madera and the County of Marin, who have been thoughtful partners in making this exciting home key project a reality. Thank you so very much. Can we go to page 2? Next one here. Just a little bit briefly about Homeward Bound. We've been in existence since 1974, responding to the community's need to provide shelter and housing pathways to individuals and to families experiencing homelessness, with a vision that everyone deserves a place to call home. We serve about 900 people annually, including veterans, families with children, seniors, and youth. In addition to operating our 5 shelters in the county, we also provide permanent supportive housing and services for families and single adults. And something you may not know about is that for 20 years, our culinary job training program has placed graduates in the food industry throughout the Bay Area. And our Fresh Starts Culinary Academy students actually will graduate next Friday with this cohort. So, Paul, do you want to take the next?
Thanks. Took me a minute to figure out how to unmute when you're also operating the slideshow. So yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about some phases of the different types of work we do. So we work with homeless families. Obviously at the Casa Buena, it's going to be single adults. And I want to be clear about that. Why do we tell you about our work with homeless families? Well, just to show that we have a lot of experience working with all kinds of people in the community in Marin here. And as Mary Kay said, we've been here since 1974, only in Marin County, serving those from Marin County. And we've developed some supportive housing with a number of people living in a congregate setting that's been very successful. So in this picture, you see a family who lives at Oma Village, is the building behind it. Oma Village has 14 families in Novato. We bought an old rundown motel, we renovated, we actually completely rebuilt this one. And now we have 14 families call at home, and we provide ongoing support services to make sure they're able to thrive, get jobs, increase their income, get healthcare, and the wraparound there. So as this slide says, we do operate families, but we also have an additional, so one of the residential programs listed is the shelter. The other 8 are supportive housing programs for families. And then my slide will advance. There we go. We also work with single adults. So again, we have 4 shelter programs, and Casa Buena is not going to be a shelter. It's going to be permanent supportive housing. And Homeward Bound has experience running 8 different supportive housing programs for single adults in Marin County. Why is that important? Because we've seen what it takes to help people who've been experiencing homelessness not only get into housing, but maintain that housing, to thrive in that housing, to be able to return, reconnect their own family members, to get jobs or volunteer in the community, and to really leave homelessness far behind them. And we also have a lot of the linkages to other community members, partners, nonprofit providers locally in Marin. And we have great relationships with them where we can pick up the phone, they answer right away, and we connect folks with services. That can be anything from like helping folks file their taxes to getting medical support they might need, through to English language classes, or returning to school, or getting a job in our, training and a job through our culinary academy. There's all kinds of different groups and different folks we're connected with. This picture here is actually at the Fireside Apartments, which is the housing is run by Eden Housing, a local provider, and we offer all the services to help people stay housed. And I'm going to pass over to Colin to talk a little bit about the Casa Buena.
So the Casa Buena has 18 studio apartments. 9 of those are on the ground floor, and 9 of those are on the second floor. We're doing a lot of work at the site to improve the units to be very livable, very comfortable for the tenants there. I think, as Paul had mentioned, the previous work that Homeward Bound has done with families, renovating that site at Oma. We have a lot of experience operating small programs like this with a lot of success. There's another site in Larkspur, King Street, was a former convent that has been converted into housing and has been very successful as well. That works, program that works with single adults, a lot of activities there, and a lot of different things that create a community. And that's really what we're looking to create at Casa Buena, is a community feeling. And Paul is gonna talk a little bit in the next few slides about the construction that's going on at Casa Buena.
So this is a picture that actually Mary Kay took on earlier this week at the Casa Buena. So it doesn't show too much going on, but a lot of the renovation has actually happened already in some of the rooms. So we anticipate, as we're well underway, we anticipate construction to be completed by March of this year. So just a couple of months. Some of the things we're doing to the site is that we are adding kitchenettes to every single unit. That did involve some interior breaking down of walls and floors so that we get the right connections in there, and then the ceiling up and sheet rocking in within there. We've completely transformed the manager's office. So whenever if you've been to a motel, you walk in and there's like that little office where you check in, and right behind that, often there's somebody living. So there was a space like that at the Casa Buena, and we're converting that into a community space because the motel rooms people live in is so small. We want to have a really social community space with coffee and newspapers, kind of like a little mini Starbucks for the residents where they can come hang out during the day, and where we can also have activities and work groups, so we can have partners come on site. Tax season right now, so we want to make sure that folks are filing their taxes, even if they're a very low income, they still need to file their taxes, and we can get tax help come on site, like that community space, and then have people come right there and get the support they need. So we see a lot of uses for that community gathering space, because we know that to keep people housed, one of the things they need is to build community. They're all in separate rooms, so we have things like bingo nights and fun things, as well as tax help. Not so fun things, but also important. We're going to remove the sign. Hasn't come down yet, but it will. We're enclosing the entire site with fencing. So on the screen here, what you're seeing actually is sort of the landscaping plan. At the bottom end, I'd say the south end of the screen is where the motel units are, and then the north end is sort of where the freeway would be, or the main road adjacent to the frontage road adjacent to the freeway. And what you're seeing is sort of a big planting plan here, and then around the edge fencing, and some planter boxes. So we're pushing the parking spaces forward, and then we are creating some private space and green space in there. So there's some outdoor areas for residents to sit, some areas to grow food, and it's a fencing almost all around the property. Certainly between Marin Joe's, there'll be a new fence up there, and also the apartment building on the left-hand side. And then on the back of the property, we're putting a big fence around. We're working with that neighbor to make sure we're coordinating on that. And then on the front, both for a noise barrier and privacy screening, can't be entirely closed because we need vehicles coming in and out, but we're closing a lot of that. And if there have been people who've been paying attention to other meetings, they may notice that we sort of moved our bike racks and a smoking area and fashion closure over here. It was previously on the Marin Joe's side of the property, and that's just better access. It makes more sense to do with the drainage and some of the underground utilities. We've added landscaping and planting as I just kind of reference. We did a bunch of ADA modifications, and then other things we find along the way, like we're replacing the roofing. There's some, when we had those huge rains, a lot of the units leaked, and so we figured out we had to replace the roof. We found some dry rot around the windows, so we, taking all that out and replacing it, and doing as many upgrades as possible to the units. We will be adding things like TVs and furniture and furnishings in there too. So that's how we get to our main improvements on the property. Colin, do you want to talk a little bit about the staffing and support?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So we're going to have a staff on site 24/7, staff or security, and really going to have a dynamic team there. I'm going to be very present, especially at the beginning of the selection process for tenants and people moving in, and we'll have a program coordinator who will be there 5 days a week with a flexible schedule, someone working on the weekends, and that's really, the staffing that's there is really to help provide a connection for people who are there, make sure people are doing okay, make sure they have everything they need. Along with that, if there happens to be anything that comes up with someone's unit, whether it be a leaky faucet or a burner not working on their stove or anything of that nature in their unit of housing, we do have a maintenance team internally who will be very available and responsive to tenants' needs. We have an awesome culinary program that Mary Kay touched on earlier. They'll be bringing by an evening meal on a daily basis. It's just a really nice bonus for the people who are living there. And then as Paul was mentioning with the space that we're creating there, it's really hoping to have very much of a community that feels part of the community they're moving into, and then a community that feels comfortable with one another and can go down and drink coffee together in the community room and get to know one another on nice days, have patio spaces where they can be outside and really feel a sense of ownership about where they're living, and feel a lot of pride about their new unit of housing. And to that token, really just helping people feel safe and like they have a space where they can kind of engage or re-engage in activities they maybe haven't been doing prior to having housing. And Homeward Bound, has of course been operating in Marin County for quite some time now. So we have a lot of community partners that we work closely with. And those community partners will be people that we're working with to identify folks who just need a place to call home. We'll fortunately, because of those partnerships, we'll know a lot of the people who are moving into the unit. So there'll be, and if we don't know them at Homeward Bound, we'll have other providers who do have some familiarity with people and can really help us get to know tenants we may not be familiar with. And the people we foresee needing this housing, it's going to be a broad range of folks, but really people who maybe haven't had much tenancy history. They really need an opportunity to build up their credit. After living at Casa Buena for a year, they do have potential to find some other unit of housing if that's something they'd like to, based on the housing subsidies that we're looking to have in place at this community. And all tenants will sign a lease. They'll pay a third of their income in rent. There will be a code of conduct. And we'll really just, as I was saying, it'll be a unit of housing for people. So people will have all of the regular things that would go with having their own, anybody renting in the community. And a few other things that we envision that we have at another site like Fireside. People coming through and providing a space to do yoga, people coming through and providing a space to just have people engage in activities, and really we're fortunate to have a lot of existing partnerships due to other locations where we operate that have similar activities coming through. So we already have those existing partnerships there, and it's really exciting to be able to bring that to another site as well. And was this mine as well?
Sorry, this is mine. I was on mute for a moment there. Still, after all these times, I haven't gotten used to Zoom. What? Anyway, you've heard us use the word community so many times now. Colin and Paul referenced building community, and we want our folks who go into these units to really feel part of your community. And so one of the things that we've done too in preparation for this is to make sure that we are, as leaders in our organization, be active in the Corte Madera Community Advisory Committee. And also the last couple of months, we've met with adjacent neighbors to get their feedback and input about this project. And I think we have some really good neighbor policies that we really foster and want to be sure that you understand that we really value good neighbors. And of course, we are holding this community forum to answer your questions and to introduce you to us. We are looking forward to when this construction is finished, to hosting a big community open house so that you all can see the units and see the community space and really appreciate the landscaping that's there that isn't visible now. We're also very much looking forward to partnering with local volunteers. as part of our programming once the tenants have moved in. We've gotten so many offers so far from people in the community who are so generous with their ideas and thoughts about how you all could be part of this this wonderful project. So so I guess we'd love to entertain any questions you might have, any specifics you might have, or general comments. Feel free. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Let me move over. It looks like we have a couple. And I'm gonna have Michael bring people over only because I'm not the greatest Zoom person either.
All right, so I'm just gonna answer them or bring them over or to allow to talk in the number that they showed in the order that they showed up. So Lynn, you're up here in a second. You should have the ability to unmute and ask whatever question you might have.
Yeah, one thing, just to let everybody know, if you're speaking, we're not going to put a time limit on this. Just try to be respectful of people's time. So just keep that in mind. Thanks. Go ahead, Lynn.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, great. Well, welcome, Homeward Bound. I am an adjacent neighbor and have been waiting for Homeward Bound to come into this project, and it just gives me huge peace of mind. I'm involved with you at Fireside and King Street and in Novato through Extra Food, and want to offer also Marin Community Fridge at this site if it makes any sense. And so truly, truly, truly welcome. I'm excited. My question is about, oh my gosh, it totally just jumped out of my mind. It's about, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Can you come back to me?
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, I remember what it is. I'm so sorry, God. Uh-oh, senior moment. My question is actually, I'm not sure it's appropriate for this meeting. It's for the city. We were promised during the Casa Buena initial project that we would get updates on what kinds of either criminal activity or police activity, basically, you know, like resources were being dedicated or were needed for that site. And we've not gotten that. I'm wondering what the protocol is going forward. And this is both to put neighbors at ease, but also for transparency. So if somebody could address that, that would be wonderful. And excuse my brain hiccup.
Oh, no problem. I don't know if you want to address that, Michael, because I know you have the connection with CMPA.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So in previous meetings that we've had, Lynn, there's been requests of, hey, can you give us an update as to the calls for service at the location and a nature of those calls for service. So we have provided that, but it took a little time for me to collect that from CMPA. So perhaps once we get rolling with Homeward Bound and the new residences, we can, plan a community meeting or a follow-up discussion X amount of months down the road to just talk about progress. And that's really how the last statistics came forward. It was through thoughtful conversation. So we're really not positioned to report out on our email list or through social media of, hey, there was a fire call for service at this location. We're really, I mean, we want to treat it like any other address within the town. So if there's something to communicate, that's egregious behavior, some type of an incident that we should relate to the community, certainly we will do that. We did that at least on one occasion when there were multiple fire trucks at the location. So I'm happy to engage discussion further on this and maybe develop a process by which we can share information. But at the same time, I mean, it requires staff from the town to contact the police authority to find out what type of calls for service. And of course, it just has different levels of complication. So I'm happy, Lynn, please contact me, after the meeting via email, via call. We can talk about how you think that might work out. Other than that, I'm still here to entertain any other ideas on that.
And just one thing, keep in mind, because I think this has come up in other community meetings, we just have to put the service calls kind of in perspective. Because if I can remember, if Central Marin Police Authority, if they pull somebody over for a traffic stop and it's in front of the Casa Buena, that's the address that they're going to use, but it may have nothing to do with the Casa Buena at all. And then the other thing, if I can remember, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any type of medical emergency, at least in Corte Madera, the police are automatically dispatched. So you may go by Casa Buena and see, you know, police car there and a paramedic there, or the fire department. It not necessarily means anything went wrong or bad from a criminal or police standpoint. They just automatically dispatch police. So I think if we get data or see anything, we just have to keep that in perspective.
Yeah, my recollection too initially was that there were some residents in the temporary transitional housing that had significant medical conditions. So I don't know if the new residents in the permanent housing, if they're going to have the same type of situation. But obviously the town's equipped and our emergency services are equipped to handle that. And in the interest of transparency, we're always willing to provide the information, but it's somewhat challenging to, unless we establish a regular interval of releasing information, it's just not something we're going to release on our social media platforms, etc. So we can brainstorm in our community groups and talk about this in the future, but please, Lynn, contact me. I will listen to anything you have to say, and we can develop a strategy to be as transparent as possible, because that's our intentions here at the town, and I'm sure that the county and Homeward Bound as well. So thank you.
Did you have anything else, Lynn? Can't tell if you're on mute or not.
Sorry, I was, no, I mean, just honestly that it was a promise made, and if there's not a process, that's surprising. But again, I want the tone to be that I'm thrilled about Homeward Bound, but I do want the town to come through with what was promised. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate the comments.
Okay, so I am going to allow, the next is Kristen. So I'm going to go ahead and allow you to talk here.
Hi there, everyone. Nice to see the updates. It's really great to hear. I'm also very thrilled that Homeward Bound is involved, and I think the work has been done as I drive by every day or ride my bike by every day. It looks really fantastic. My only question, other than to say thank you all for your thoughtfulness and all of the work that's been put into it, is to ask the question I ask at every meeting, which is, are you allowing smoking / vaping / drug use on the Casa Buena?
I can answer that if you want. Smoking / vaping is allowed in the smoking area, not allowed in the building. Any illegal activity is not allowed. It's in the lease and also in the code of conduct. So refer to drug use that way, that's not allowed, would be a breaking the terms of the lease. But we do have a smoking area. We do find that some of the population we serve do smoke cigarettes. We always encourage them to quit, but that is a personal freedom that our neighbors down the street, next to me would also have. So yeah, that's sort of our stance on those issues.
I do remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when I visited King Street, they had not allowed smoking on the site, even outside. And I think there was also an issue about parking as well, which is not an issue in this case because there is parking available. But I'm curious if that is really the case for King Street. I say that because there's already a lot of noise and emissions coming from all of the cars on the freeway all along Casa Buena, that it's hard to avoid the pollution essentially. And so adding smoking on top of that for an already issued street has just made it really difficult for people to want to kind of walk around there.
I hear what you're saying, and you're right in saying that at King Street, the use permit there did not allow any smokers based on a prior incident there and prior use. It's not the case in this one. But I think honestly, there'll be this, no more smokers than were people who were at the motel previously, stayed in the motel when it was a motel, or in the apartment building next door, even the few people who are outside Marin Joe's smoking. So again, we would definitely encourage people to quit, and to reduce. And we work with Bay Area Community Resources. We've actually seen a bunch of people quit. We have a video on our Homeward Bound YouTube channel. We tell people stories. This one guy said, after 20 years, he's finally quitting because he's got stability and he's learning how to manage his money, and $9 a day and a pack of cigarettes, and he's able to quit. And so it does happen, but I think we can't promise you that there'll be no smokers. In fact, I think there will be some, but we're, I think that's just, we want to be transparent. There will be folks there. We are putting a smoking area because there's no smoking in the units. So, I hear your concerns, but I would say it's probably no more smoking than there were when people were staying in the motel previously.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was a concern when it was a shelter. I think every time I drove by or rode my bike by, there was at least one, if not two or three people there smoking. And I'm a cancer survivor and I have a child. I certainly don't want to increase my risk of that or anybody else's in the community. So in general, I'm not a big fan of smoking. So
I'm with you, Kristen. I'm actually a former smoker who quit a long time ago. And I'm really not in favor of it either, but that people are allowed their personal choice. But I hear what you're saying. And we hopefully, as people have more stability there and that this is their home, it might be easier to change patterns of behavior. Whereas when it's a shelter, people are there temporarily and they're still thinking of the next, what are they going next? What's the next step? Where on their journey? And so we don't, some behavior patterns might change, but it's not necessarily likely. Whereas people have some more stability in terms of, I don't have to worry about where I'm going to sleep now. I have a unit and I can afford the unit. I'm getting my food. You can start then working on other areas of your life. And we have seen that in other parts of our programs. I'll be quiet. I've seen Mary Kay and Colin also on mute, so I'll be quiet.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Paul, to what you were talking about. And Kristen, I totally understand and appreciate your comments. That I think with the addition of the landscaping as a filter for some of this too will be very helpful. It won't be as visible probably as it was before because it was kind of wide open. And I think this will be a big boon to the whole front area.
That's a good comment. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will still want to revisit this as often as I can, but I appreciate all of your thoughtfulness and responses.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and Karen, I'm going to bring you over to allow to talk. Here you go. Karen, you should have the ability to talk.
Yeah, but I don't have anything to say. I'm just listening to the program.
Oh, okay, your hand was up, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
just a little icon
Okay.
at the bottom of the screen. You can go
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There is a, Doc Bundy sent a message asking about, in the text, hold on, I think we have someone off mute. Let me, there we go. If residents are physically fit, will they help with cleaning and landscaping? And I'm not sure if Homeward Bound engages the residents to participate in communal type activities like that. And that could segue into some of our working group community volunteerism that we might be able to open that up and talk about anyone who might be interested in volunteerism. So Homeward Bound, if you can answer Doc Bundy's question, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can comment on that. I mean, we would love that. that would be fantastic. It wouldn't be a requirement, but it would definitely be something that, as we were saying during the presentation, that we really want people to feel a sense that this is their home, and there's buy-in to taking care of the property, and there's spaces for planting that will go in. There's also spaces to grow food. So if someone wanted to get involved doing that, or had ideas for activities in the community room, I think there's a lot to be done there around things that community members can be involved with and around. And we have other sites where that is absolutely the culture. So we'll have the same perspective and same ideas there of just really inviting people and encouraging people to do so, while not requiring them. But if there's other volunteers from the community who come in, we'd also want residents to take those opportunities to be involved with that type of thing as well. So
I'll add that sort of in the shelters that we run, there is definitely a culture we're trying to create of that, where we have a chore list. We ask people to sign up, or they can get assigned chores, and it can be based on their abilities. So particularly in this time of COVID, some people might be disabled or even in a wheelchair, but they sign up to clean the door handles on a frequent basis because of COVID. We have to keep everything super clean, right? So we do have a culture of that. In this site, there is, when you have a lease, you can't mandate like your lease will be terminated if you don't clean the door handle or whatever, whatever chore it is, right? So there are different tenancy rights that people have, but absolutely we encourage it. We've seen at some of our other sites, like somebody planted a butterfly garden with plants to attract monarch butterflies, and they maintain that, and that was driven by the resident. Another person likes to do paintings of folks in the parking lot at a site. Another site we have had things like we've had recycling initiatives where we collect the recycling and then we take everything to get the money back, and then that goes into the pot for bingo, and so the residents will win that money from their own recycling. Or we've had deep clean Fridays where we encourage everyone to clean, and we will do unit inspections. We are allowed to do that, so we encourage the interior to stay clean as well. But again, as Colin said, it won't be mandated, but we really encourage it. And then those things on the property itself, often we love the tenant to really decide what it looks like. What do we plant? If we plant a bunch of lettuce and nobody eats it, that's different. But if we plant chilies and or they decide to plant it and they want to make hot sauce, great. So we'll just see what happens with who's living there.
Hey, Leila, can you or Adriana talk about maybe some of the donation efforts or the volunteer efforts on the Corte Madera side now? We're supporting, I want to say, Homeward Bound coming up, or supported Casa Buena in the past. Just briefly.
Sure, yeah.
Don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, not at all. Yeah, so last time around, some people on this call might have even participated. The participants, we did welcome baskets to welcome the residents, and we'll be hopefully doing something like that again. We're kind of, I think, in the initial exploratory phase in terms of trying to figure out what's going to work and how best to mobilize this great community we have to embrace our new neighbors and to help them, be part of this community and take ownership in living in Corte Madera. So there will definitely be further communications coming out about that, but we don't really have anything settled just yet. Adriana, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add.
No, that covered it. We're going to be looking for ways to get the community involved. The Homeward Bound staff and team are happy to have community involvement. We're happy to help them, and so we'll look for opportunities that get everyone involved.
Thanks. And I know, Paul, I think you've already been in contact partially with the Corte Madera Community Foundation and also the Corte Madera Alliance.
Yes, both of those, and we're looking forward to presenting both of them in the coming months. We are really encourage everyone to come to the community open house too, when we'll have thought out some of these things like the welcome baskets and sign ups for volunteer activities. In one of the photos on the slideshow, there was a Cycling with Age, which is a woman who rides her bike around the trails all around Corte Madera and Larkspur, and has taken residents from other programs before. She's already signed up, and when you have residents, I want to show them the trails, show them where the hiking is, take them on the bike ride, show them around. So we'll be encouraging that. And one thing we are interested in doing is coming up with a different name. We might stick with Casa Buena, but that was sort of associated with what was there with the shelter. So we'd love the community to help us think of a new name. So we will be putting out communications of how to let us know your ideas. If you have a great one already, absolutely, you can find us through the Homeward Bound website, and there's a link to email us. But we'll be asking this, it'd be great if someone from the Corte Madera community could come up with a great name for this new housing site. So there'll be lots of various ways as we get up and running that we folks can get engaged. So we really appreciate that, and it goes two ways. As people feel welcome, then they engage more. I know at one of the other sites we've seen residents, as they get established over time, they've started volunteering in the local thrift store, or working as an usher in the local movie theater, or walking dogs at the Humane Society in one of our other sites. So folks, when they feel welcomed in by volunteers, then they often, not everyone, but some folks then want to volunteer as well in the community. So it's really, that's the way we build community, rather than just kind of be separate and siloed. So we felt so welcomed so far, and we hope when the residents move in that they feel the same too. So we're looking forward to it.
Thanks. It's all good. I do have one question for you. Can you just maybe expand a little, because you've mentioned a few times about lease and then code of conduct. Can you just expand on those two? Because it just seems, I want to say your model is a little bit different, where it's almost like a tenant to a certain degree landlord relationship, and not just somebody moving in with a quick turnaround. And then the code of conduct, I know that ties back to the lease. So can you just expand on that so people get a little bit better understanding?
Can you say that, Mary Kay, or do you want to do it?
Start with the lease. It's a regular legal lease that we really have in all of our permanent housing places. And so people really do have to follow all of the guidelines on a regular lease. So and people are held to that too, including the paying of their rent. So it's just a standard lease that we use. The code of conduct, I think, is something that, we have in all of our programs. Everyone signs it, including all of our staff and our volunteers and our board members. And it really has to do with proper behavior everywhere, with treating people with dignity, with respect, with being, doing things that are lawful, not unlawful. So we can certainly share that. It's a small document, but we'll be happy to post that for you all, so you have a chance to see the entire thing.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, maybe you can connect with Michael and he can get it up on our website.
Sure.
That would be great, because I need to take down some of the code of conduct for Catholic Charities and freshen up some of our web pages, some of the outdated information, so that I could connect with Colin or Paul and just get some of those documents to just have accessible. I've been thinking behind the scenes too about what Lynn was saying about stats, and I might be able to create a sub page on our web page and just post, every quarter or every 6 months, just general information for calls for service. But I want to just caution you that, calls for service, there could, it's really just raw data. I mean, there could be an incident 20 feet down the Casa Buena, and we won't capture that information because it's not address specific. So I need to wrap my head around that a little further and potentially come up with a solution. So Lynn, if you want to talk, anytime, I'm again, brainstorm how we can potentially be more transparent with that information. I'm happy to do that. So with that, Glenn has his hand up. So let's let
Go ahead, Glenn, if you can.
Whoops, I may not have been unmuted there. Am I unmuted?
Nope, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Hey, so I've got a quick question for you, just sort of a follow-up to that lease. So Mary Kay, where she was describing that it's a, sort of a standard lease, which I completely understand. But what you wouldn't get in a typical lease is that ability to go in and, walk through tenants, rooms. Or apartments or whatever that is. So maybe just getting some clarity on how, the similarities and differences that exist with these types of leases, because I know that it it's a general concern. I'll just say it out loud, but where people go from sort of in a homeless situation to then having tenants' rights, a lot of times the community gets worried. Well, do they have more rights than they should have when they haven't had that responsibility up until this point? And so I just like to get a better understanding. I think the community would like to get a better understanding of that, the specifics of that lease, and like I said, that ability to go through their properties.
So Glenn, I want to clarify that, and we're happy to share a sample lease. And actually, we've done that before at other sites, ahead of time. But there is always 24 hours notice given if we are going to go in somebody's property, just like a landlord would have to if he wanted to come and inspect, where somebody else is living. But we do, have those addendums to come in. You're right. But we're not doing it. We're doing it really to make sure it's part of our service work, to make sure we're spending all this money on this property, to make sure that it's in good shape, but also really so we catch anything, like if somebody had a hoarding issue, which honestly anybody in our families could have, not just somebody who's who has experienced homelessness is now housed, but we do occasionally come across those things. So we don't want to go and only see that once a year. That's the purpose for those inspections, is that we're catching things like that, and then we can wrap around the support needed to assist that tenant earlier on. But yes, we're happy to share the lease.
I think that's great to hear that, by the way. I think that just hearing that and you describing it like that, I think in describing it like that, as opposed to just sort of this, standard lease, this understanding that there's this mutual, there's this sort of mutual respect through that lease, whereby those tenants do, of course, have rights, but additionally, they're being supported by Catholic Charities, and that. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, and Glenn, I would say one thing that's slightly different with our programs, and we do explain this to folks, is that this is permanent supportive housing. So it's the supportive piece as opposed to that's the addition that comes with it. It's not independent housing, it's permanent supportive housing. So we have this wraparound level of support, which includes the meals, but also includes the staff engaging, assisting folks that, we manage all the utilities and folks don't have to pay those. It's included so that we make sure that they have all those basic things. And then folks, as Colin had described, after they've been there for a year, they can move on, but we've helped them negotiate what's in a lease. How do you follow the lease? Paying by the 5th of the month. People aren't used to budgeting. So we're really supportive in that process. And then our hope is that many folks then do move on entirely to their own lease independently of us, and it makes room for the next person to come through.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. And we have somebody else in public comment, if you can bring her over, Michael. And while he's doing that, God, Paul, I just had a question for you. I just couldn't remember what it is. I'll get back to it. I know I will.
Unfortunately, she's not there anymore. I saw her name and now she's not up there. Hopefully she rejoins us.
Okay, let's give her a minute or two and see if she will.
It was LaSonda Tate who's with Homeward Bound.
I
don't know.
She's back.
She was going to add a comment.
Oh, here we go. LaSonda's back, so we're going to go ahead and bring her over. Hello.
Hi. I just wanted to add to what Paul said, but he said it all. I just was going to say that Homeward Bound, and hi everybody, I'm LaSonda Tate, Director of Housing and Operations with Homeward Bound in Marin. I sit on the leadership team with Paul and Mary Kay and work closely with Adriana with the VOAD. So I was just going to say that, it's a program. So yes, they have a lease and we do have to follow by California renters' rights. But because they signed the code of conduct, which is also an addendum to our lease, is a program that they're aware that they're having supportive services, that we will engage with them and support services in their units so that we can have eyes on the unit a little bit more than a normal tenant. And Paul said all that, so I only raised my hand early on, but my colleagues have it all together. Thank you.
That's okay, all good, thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
That's the question I had. Paul, do you see an average time for residents staying? Is it a year, 5 years, or it just kind of varies?
Totally varies.
Okay.
You know, we have.
Varies. I think
No,
we're
go ahead,
beginning,
Mary Kay.
yeah, I was going to say, we're beginning to see a few people move out of King Street in Larkspur now. Because they just want a bigger space. So they want, they want something different, or want to be in a different part of the county. So yeah, it just varies from person to person, really.
We have
But
some
that's
people
right.
who love being in community. Some of our programs, people have stayed there 10, 15, 20 years, and they love that community. They love not worrying about the utilities and bills and all those sort of things all taken care of. There are other folks that really see it as a stepping stone as they move on to independence, and they're there for a year or two. And
And I guess that's a good thing. It shows the success of the program when you do have people that want to move out and move on to their own independency. I think it's great.
And I do want to add, I think a piece of that, if there is a tenant who's there for a shorter term, and this kind of ties back to what Glenn was asking, we as a program really want to make sure that that person's ready and able to do that well. So if someone, is living at this site for a year or two, that they really get the experience of kind of what Paul was touching on, of being able to pay rent in a timely manner, budgeting, and they really do have the ability when they go out into the rental market to be successful in that unit of housing. And so it's really a great opportunity to, especially if it's younger adults, to get that experience of, hey, I can now go on to another site that maybe doesn't have the same level of support, but I'm going to do well as a resident in Marin County, and I'm going to be really successful, and I'm going to be able to touch back on what I learned while living at a unit like that. So it's a big piece of it.
Okay, thanks. I think Lynn has her hand raised again.
All right, Lynn, come on over.
You're getting good at this, Michael.
God, that Lynn. I initially, when Casa Buena was being formed, the intention was to temporarily house the long-term unhoused, people that maybe had been without homes for 20 years or so. I'm curious about if that's still kind of the intention. And then, this is just, I'm curious, there's no right or wrong answer, but kind of what the success rate, if success means staying housed, let's just say it does for the moment, what that looks like. And I don't know who to address the question to, but I appreciate being able to ask.
Is this a Paul or Mary answer?
I'll take a first stab, but I love Colin and Mary Kay to jump in too. I think your question is a great one in terms of who is this intended to serve? I think what we're looking at is we're still looking at people who are vulnerable. So essentially they have to have some kind of disabling condition and have been homeless for a year or more. They may have been in shelter that whole time. They may have been homeless for a long time. But the idea is who can be we want to set everybody up for success. And so what we're seeing now is a lot of those folks who maybe who've got a voucher in the past, or maybe have a voucher in their hand now, they're not able to use it because they haven't rented for so long. So that's like somebody who would be a great tenant. We've already identified them as a great person to live, maybe even independently in the community, but they're not able to utilize that voucher because no one's quite sure how to rent to them, because they don't have a credit score and they don't have a rental history. So they can come in with us, rent here, build that, and move on. So it's not necessarily people who've been homeless for the longest. It may be some of those folks, but it's not necessarily, that's not a criteria. More it's like, who's a great fit for this site? I think that, other people we've talked about are people who sort of really benefit from that support services. Colin was sort of indicating before, somebody who we've seen, maybe they've been homeless, maybe they're in the shelter now, but we're not quite sure how they would do independently without the wraparound support. So there is somebody on site each day who can help them manage daily living, get the support, maybe family started to re-engage to encourage the family relationship to grow, and then that could be a step on for folks. So people who really would benefit from having someone there to help them in housing. But there isn't really one type of homeless person. Everybody is different and everyone has their own story. So it's very hard to be like this person, because we've met Homeward Bound at 900 people a year. I've been there for 16 years. Mary Kay's been there for 26. So many people have come through, and each person has their own different story. And so it's hard to really categorize who's a good fit. We're just really trying to match like people in front of us who we know well, who we think would do well here. Mary Kay and Colin.
Yes, I was just going to add, Lynn, the other part of your question had to do with what success rate is for working with people who have been maybe chronically homeless, and we've done a lot of supportive services for them in housing. And Ashley, forgive me if I'm wrong about this, but I think it's about 95% success of people have remained housed over the last 6 or 7 years that we've been doing this.
You're very wrong, Mary Kay. It's in fact 94.99.
Oh dear, I was. I've never been good at math. Anyway,
that was a fact check. Fact checking.
Fact check.
Right. But I think what's really
That's incredible. That's incredible.
What's really important to note is that it's because we have a really great collaboration among all the providers in this county to make this happen. So everyone's been working really hard to make sure that these folks have a journey home and they can actually be successful at home. And that supportive service piece of it is really essential to make it happen.
Yeah, and that 94.99 retention rate, that's across 439 people that we've housed since October of 2017. So it's a pretty significant sample size, and seriously exceeds the success rates that HUD uses, the Department of Housing and Urban Development uses to measure success of permanent supportive housing programs. They're looking for an 85% housing retention rate, and we blow that out of the water. So we're pretty proud of that.
You should be. Kudos. Thank you.
Great.
Anything else, Lynn?
Nope.
Okay, thanks. Paul, just dovetail off something Lynn said. What is a selection process? Do people apply? Do you go out and figure out, okay, who looks like they may be a good fit? How do you you're smiling, how do you figure that out?
Well, we work as a community, so Homeward Bound, but along with the Housing Authority, the county, and a lot of the other service providers. And we use a process that it's called coordinated entry, but also we use this process called a by name list, which we've learned as a national best practice. And Colin and Ashley and myself and various other folks have been learning from a nationwide, actually they won the MacArthur Award last year. So it's sort of solutions to end homelessness is to really look at each person, have everybody who's experiencing homelessness on a list by name, and then a whole bunch of providers around the table, both folks who are decision makers, but also case workers on the ground who know those people. And we go through and we identify, what is the best fit and the best available resource for each of these folks. So looking through who's a veteran and what are the veteran resources, who's a senior and what are the senior resources. But in this type of thing, who would be good in a small space with other neighbors, who had chance to build rental and credit history. And so that process really happens by a group of folks getting together and talking about each person before they are matched with the unit. And we do go through, there is also, we do take into consideration their vulnerabilities. So we want to make sure people are not dying outside and that the people who are the most vulnerable to get matched with the appropriate resource. But then we also want to make sure that appropriateness is a fit with the housing they're going into. Some people do not do well with roommates or living closely with others. And so that's something you have to consider. We have some programs that have 2 or 3 roommates living together. So we got to be really careful who goes in there. It's a similar sort of process. So we've talked about it already, like how do we do this? So we have a case conferencing meeting, and we'll be particularly focusing on this unit, like who would be a good fit, who's already been prioritized for a voucher but hasn't been able to use it because of some of the issues that we've identified already. Who else would be a good fit for this? And then also we like to have, a good mix of age, race, gender demographics too. So not everybody in there is, a white male in their 20s. And we wouldn't do that, but just giving you an example, you want a whole range of folks in this. So that's a consideration too. So I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, but that's sort of the process we've been going through. We actually had a meeting this morning where we talked about not the people, but the process and who would be a good fit and how will the program work.
Sounds like you do a pretty thorough vetting across the board in different categories to make sure you're getting the right fit type thing.
We try. Absolutely, we try.
And in the case of Casa Buena, there won't be any roommates, right? Just 18 individual rooms, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so small. Some programs even have a live-in aid, but they're too small for that too. So everybody who's here will need to be able to do their activities of daily living. They'll need to be able to do all those things independently because we just can't have a live-in aid with folks. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other comments from the public before we kind of wrap this up? And I apologize. Let me also introduce Jeff Wong, who's from Marin County. Can't remember your title, but he is on the planning and the building side of the fence, I want to say. And he kind of took the lead between the architects, getting the building permits and all that fun stuff so the project could move forward. Is that pretty kind of sum it up, Jeff?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I appreciate it. I did want to make one comment. First of all, I really appreciate this group and Homeward Bound and all the things that they've done. Before I started working for the county, I did have an opportunity to work on 2 other affordable housing projects in the city. And when I worked on those, we were given limited budgets. We're only able to give them like $100 2-burner stove, and a 12-inch counter. When I started this project, oh no, is this going to be one of those type of projects? And I'm so happy that the team pulled together and we were able to just really design this really well. I'm helping to pick out furniture right now, and it's a beautiful project. The projects I worked in the city, there was no landscaping, no parking, and one of the buildings didn't even have a community room. To see all that and to see how this got put together and done in a beautiful way, I'm really proud of it. So I just wanted to mention that. So thank you guys.
Thanks. We appreciate all your work. I think this is another example of this group, the advisory group or the working group coming together, because it wasn't just Marin County going, oh, here's what we're going to do. Jeff and his team actually reached out to the business owners on both sides, the neighbors. We had several discussions with the architects that they brought in. So it's truly, I just feel like it's truly collaborative and partnership, which I think is great. So thanks.
Can I add one thing to that? I want to just appreciate that one thing that Jeff said there is, the county is stepping up and covering all the costs of the furniture for these units, in addition to the majority of the construction costs, the vast majority of the construction costs. Some of that was home key funds, but some was county too. There's been a bunch of people contributing here. We've also reached out to SWA Architecture in Sausalito. They're a local, very high-end landscape company, and they're pro bono providing the landscape design. And Tamalpais Pacific, a local community foundation, adding to the budget so that we've been able to get some grants in. There's a couple other individuals who've donated too. So there's a whole bunch of different resources that have come to the table, including sort of the county adding the furniture to this. So we really appreciate that, and I'm working with Jeff and his team.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I think the other thing that shows the success again of how we move forward with respect to the working group is Larkspur, I think, is looking at project at South Elysia Drive, and they have somewhat modeled what we're doing here as far as bringing the proper members together, the teams together, the county, Larkspur residents. So I think it's all good stuff. With that, I don't see any more public comment. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I just wanted to also just add to that collaborative discussion. Adam Wolf, our planning and building director, he's really been the point and of origin for creating and facilitating many discussions on this. I can see I'm in the comfort of my own home right now doing this Zoom meeting, but Adam's been at work the last 3 nights on late nights on meetings and just, doing what's best for the community. So I thought I'd at least give him a shout out for his work, because he's really, he was in the beginning, as part of the interview panel for our community working group. And so he seems to have his hands in most all meetings. So Adam, thank you. I don't know if you want to take a minute to.
Totally unnecessary, Mike. That is out of order, not necessary. I appreciate the comments, but really it's been a team effort from everybody here, and I'm just happy to be part of it. So and this is what we do in Corte Madera, so right. I mean, and so just looking forward to the continued progress and seeing this project open along with everybody else.
Yeah, thank you. And so just members of the community, we are going to, this has been recorded. We're going to go ahead and post the recording on our website, as on the YouTube channel, as well as we'll put a link in messaging probably in next week's newsletter. We'll post the, with the permission of Homeward Bound, we'll post the PowerPoint presentation. And we'll be following up in the near future with regards to this open house come March, if the construction schedule continues to go as planned. I really appreciate all the relationships and the participation of all the members here present today. And we really could, I mean, it takes a village, it takes a community to obtain success and highlight Corte Madera's success. So I want to thank everyone, because it's a communal effort.
Yeah, and just really quick, Paul, Colin, or Mary Kay, do you have any closing comments? I know we're going to be seeing a lot more of the 3 of you, but anything you'd like to close out with?
I think just a big thank you. This has been a wonderful evening, and we really, really appreciate getting to know you all better. And we look forward really to opening this really wonderful housing opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And again, that kind of concludes it. Like Michael said, we're looking forward to the open house. We're going to model it somewhat on like a open house for a house that's being sold type thing, where it'll be X amount of hours before residents move in. So it'll all be good. So again, thank you everybody for participating. Have a good night.